All right, let's dive in. We're getting into some seriously cool stuff today. Natural and organic gardening and farming, the good stuff.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're focusing on fermented plant extracts.
Right.
And, our listener has been looking into alternatives to chemical fertilizers and pesticides lately, and seems pretty intrigued by using lacto-fermented herbs to boost and protect plants naturally.
It's a fascinating world, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like this whole idea of your garden just thriving, without those harsh chemicals, all powered by these microscopic helpers. Pretty wild.
It is. And it actually ties in really well with the listener's interest in biodynamic methods, like what they use on Demeter-certified farms.
Yeah.
We can definitely circle back to that a bit later.
Yeah, for sure.
But first, I think we should talk about these students, Kessler and Steen. They've been doing some amazing things.
Right. Kessler and Steen, they're like these total natural gardening enthusiasts, right?
Absolutely.
They're so into finding solutions that work with nature, not against it.
Exactly.
And they're trying to figure out why avoiding chemicals actually makes their garden healthier and more sustainable.
It's a great example of moving away from that allopathic approach to gardening and embracing a more holistic one.
Okay, now you have to explain that. What's the difference?
So imagine you have a headache.
Okay.
The allopathic approach, like conventional medicine, would be to just take a painkiller, right? Just target the pain directly.
All right, just get rid of it.
But a holistic approach would be more about asking, why do I even have this headache?
Okay.
Is it stress, lack of sleep? Maybe I need to change something bigger in my life, in my lifestyle.
I see. So instead of just attacking the symptom, you're looking at the whole picture, trying to prevent the problem from even happening in the first place.
Precisely. And it's the same with gardening. Allopathic gardening is about fighting pests and diseases with chemicals, but a holistic approach is about creating the right conditions for plants to thrive on their own.
Right. So they can naturally resist problems, kind of like building up their immune system.
Exactly. You mentioned probiotics earlier, and it's funny because these fermented plant extracts are kind of like probiotics for your soil.
That's a great analogy. So we're using this age-old technique of fermentation, but instead of food, we're applying it to our gardens.
You got it.
But hold on, how does this actually work? Like, we take plants, we ferment them, and somehow that's good for other plants. I need the details.
Of course. So think of it this way. Fermentation creates this liquid packed with nutrients and beneficial microbes. And when we give this liquid to our plants, we're not just feeding the plants, we're feeding the entire soil ecosystem.
So it's like introducing an army of microscopic helpers to the soil.
Exactly. They're like little multitaskers down there. They break down organic matter, making nutrients easier for plants to access. They help improve the soil structure for better root growth and water absorption. And they even compete with harmful organisms, creating a healthier overall environment.
It's like throwing a welcome party for all the good guys in the soil and making it hard for the bad guys to crash it.
I love that analogy. It's all about creating that balance, that thriving ecosystem right in your backyard.
Okay, so we've got this powerful liquid full of good microbes. But what kinds of plants are we actually talking about here? I know the research mentioned some specific examples, right?
Yes, definitely. There are so many plants we can use, each with unique benefits. Let's start with comfrey.
Comfrey. Yeah, I've heard it's like the superstar of garden plants. What makes it so special?
Well, comfrey is loaded with this compound called allantoin.
Allantoin, okay.
And it's known for stimulating like cell growth and regeneration.
Oh, wow.
Which is why it's so good for seedlings. It gives them a super boost to get going.
So it's not just about adding nutrients to the soil. It's like actually helping the plants themselves get stronger and healthier.
Exactly. And the cool thing is the benefits extend beyond the plants themselves. Comfrey also boosts microbial activity in the soil.
So everything's happy.
Right. And that leads to even better nutrient cycling and overall soil health. It's a win-win.
I like it. Now, what about nettle? I remember the research mentioned that it's a powerhouse, too. Does it have similar effects?
Nettle is like the ultimate plant multivitamin. It's packed with nitrogen, potassium, iron, all the good stuff that plants need to grow.
Right.
But it's not just a fertilizer. It actually acts as an immunostimulant for plants.
Really? So it's like it's giving them extra protection.
Exactly. It helps them ward off those pests and diseases.
Well, no wonder nettle is so popular with, the natural gardening crowd.
For sure.
And I'm also seeing horsetail mentioned here. What's so special about that one?
Horsetail is interesting. It's known for its high silica content. And silica, well, that's essential for plant strength and resilience.
Okay, how so?
Well, it helps build strong cell walls in the plant, making them less vulnerable to pests and diseases.
Ah, so it's like giving them armor.
Yeah, you could say that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I also see bracken and male fern extract mentioned here. I think that was specifically for dealing with woolly aphids.
Right. Yep. Bracken and male fern, they have those natural insecticidal properties. They can repel all sorts of pests, but especially those woolly aphids.
It's amazing how nature just has all these solutions built in.
Mm.
But with all these different extracts and specific uses, it seems like there's a lot to remember. Any advice for a beginner, someone like me, who wants to try this whole fermented plant extract thing?
Absolutely. I always say start small, keep it simple. Pick one or two plants that you're really interested in.
Okay.
Maybe comfrey for its growth boosting power, or nettle for its all-around benefits. There are tons of resources online and in books, with easy recipes for making these extracts.
So it's not like some crazy complicated chemistry experiment. Even a newbie like me can handle it.
Exactly. That's the beauty of fermentation. It's a natural process, no fancy equipment or anything.
That's good to hear.
You basically mix the plant material with water, maybe a little molasses or whey to kick things off, and then nature does the rest.
So I just let it sit, and the microbes do their magic. Sounds almost too easy.
It really is that simple. Now, before we get too carried away with all this fermented plant extract talk, I do want to circle back to something we mentioned earlier: biodynamic preparations.
Right. You were talking about Demeter certification, which I know has to do with biodynamic farming.
Right. Biodynamic farming takes this whole holistic thing to another level.
Okay.
It sees the farm as this living organism that's connected to cosmic rhythms and all sorts of influences.
Whoa, okay. So it's about more than just what's physically happening on the farm. It's about the energy and the spiritual side of things too.
Precisely. And biodynamic preparations, which are made from, fermented plants and animal materials, they're a huge part of this approach. They're used to make the soil more fertile, stimulate growth in plants, and just create this more balanced, harmonious ecosystem on the farm.
So both of these methods, fermented plant extracts and biodynamic preparations, they both use the power of fermentation and acknowledge that a healthy ecosystem is key to having healthy plants.
Right. It really speaks to how interconnected everything is and the wisdom of working with these natural processes that already exist. And the cool thing is, these practices have been around for ages, and now they're becoming popular again as people look for more sustainable, holistic ways to garden and farm.
Yeah, it's like we're rediscovering all this ancient knowledge and realizing that nature already holds a lot of the answers we're looking for. But I am curious about how these two approaches compare, fermented plant extracts versus biodynamic preparations. Are there any big differences?
Well, both embrace fermentation and the whole idea of a balanced ecosystem, but they have some subtle differences in how they approach things.
Okay, let's break that down. What would you say is the biggest difference between the two?
I think the main difference is that biodynamic farming adds this deeper spiritual and philosophical layer to the whole thing.
Okay.
Like I said, it sees the farm as this living organism connected to cosmic forces, to the universe, really.
So it's like the farm is part of this bigger web of life, not just a plot of land.
Exactly. And you see this philosophy in the way they make and use these special preparations, they're timed with the lunar cycles and other cosmic events.
Whoa, that's pretty wild.
It is. It's about syncing up the farm's rhythms with the rhythms of the universe to create balance and harmony. And then, you have the fermented plant extracts, which, while they still utilize the power of nature, they tend to focus more on those practical benefits like boosting plant health and soil fertility.
So both approaches have their strengths and perspectives, giving gardeners and farmers more choices when it comes to natural and holistic methods.
Right. And ultimately, the best approach is the one that resonates most with you, with your goals and values. It's all about finding what works for you and your specific garden.
That makes sense. It's really inspiring to hear about these students, Kessler and Steen, and their passion for finding natural solutions. They're really proving that it can be done.
They really are. Their dedication is incredible, and their success just shows the power of observation, experimentation, and just being willing to learn from nature. They're a great example of how even small efforts can make a real difference.
And their story reminds us that we don't need to be experts or have tons of land to make a positive impact. We can all start by making small changes in our own gardens, embracing natural methods, working with nature.
Absolutely. As we shift our perspectives in how we do things, we not only help our gardens, but contribute to a healthier, more sustainable world overall. It's about understanding that we're all connected and that our actions have effects beyond just our immediate surroundings.
That's a great point. It's not just about gardening, it's about making the world a better place. But speaking of Kesser and Steen, I'm curious to hear more about their journey. What made them so passionate about finding natural solutions? Do they have any challenges along the way?
Their story is fascinating, full of successes and setbacks. But throughout it all, they were totally committed to creating a thriving garden ecosystem without any chemical inputs.
I can't wait to hear more. Did they encounter any pushback or doubt along the way?
Yeah, they definitely faced some skepticism. I mean, not everyone believed that they could have a thriving garden without using any conventional methods.
Right, it's kind of going against the grain, right?
Yeah.
So what got them started on this whole journey?
Well, it all started with their concern about the impact of chemicals, fertilizers and pesticides.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They were worried about the environment and also about, whether those chemicals could end up in their food. They wanted to grow healthy food, but not, at the expense of the planet or their own health.
It's something a lot of people are starting to think about more and more these days. There's this growing awareness that we can't just keep doing things the same old way without considering the consequences.
Exactly. And the inspiring thing about Kesser and Steen is that they didn't just worry about it. They actually did something. They started researching and experimenting with these lacto-fermented herbs as a natural alternative.
And remember, they were still students when they started this whole project.
Really?
Impressive, right? I mean, I was more concerned with, what was for lunch in the cafeteria back then, not revolutionizing gardening practices.
It really shows their passion and dedication, and they didn't just jump in blindly either. They were really systematic about it. They compared their fermented herb approach to biodynamic methods. They even read up on Demeter-certified practices.
That's what I find so cool about their story. It's not just this fluffy, back to nature thing. They were really thinking critically about the whole process, comparing different approaches and actually doing the research.
Exactly. And their garden is proof that it works. Their plants were healthy and resilient, and they were able to grow plenty of amazing food without resorting to any of those chemical fertilizers or pesticides.
Okay, so it clearly worked for them, but let's be real here. Is this something that only, hardcore gardening enthusiasts can do? I imagine myself trying to brew up these concoctions and it just turned into some chaotic science experiment gone wrong.
Oh, I get it. Fermentation can sound a little intimidating, but honestly, it's super simple and straightforward once you get the hang of it.
Really? So I don't need a chemistry degree and a lab coat to pull this off?
Nope, not at all. Remember, we're tapping into the power of nature here, and nature is all about efficiency and simplicity.
Okay, that makes me feel better. But I still need some guidance here. Walk me through it. What are the basics?
It's similar to making sauerkraut or kimchi, the things you've already tried. You take your plant material like comfrey or nettle, add water, and maybe a little something to get the fermentation going, like molasses or whey.
So we're basically giving those microbes a sugar rush to get the party started.
Exactly. Then you just let it sit, let those microbes work their magic. They'll break down the plant material and create that nutrient-rich, liquid gold.
Liquid gold. I like the sound of that. But is there anything specific I need to know about actually using these extracts in my garden?
Well, dilution is key. These extracts are potent, so you want to dilute them before you use them on your plants. And it's important to watch your plants, see how they respond and adjust the concentration as needed.
So it's all about finding that balance, giving them the benefits without overwhelming them.
Exactly. It's a little bit of an art, a little bit of science.
Speaking of art and science, what about the ethics of all this? Are there any concerns about disrupting the natural balance of the soil ecosystem by adding all these extra microbes?
That's a great question. And you're right. It's important to approach any gardening practice with respect for the natural world. When we're using these fermented plant extracts, we're essentially giving the soil a boost of beneficial microbes.
Right. So it's like we're giving the soil microbiome a little nudge in the right direction.
Precisely. As long as we're using a diverse range of plants for our extracts and applying them thoughtfully, we're actually helping to improve the biodiversity and the resilience of that whole soil ecosystem.
So it's about working with nature, not trying to control it.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of these natural methods. It's all about collaboration, not domination.
Well said. This has been such an amazing deep dive. I feel like we've really explored some fascinating stuff today. fermented plant extracts, biodynamics, the power of working with nature. It's been a whirlwind.
Yeah.
Any final takeaways you'd like to leave our listener with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we have so much power to create thriving, healthy gardens without needing to rely on those harsh chemicals.
It's about changing our approach, moving away from that idea of fighting against nature and embracing this idea of creating balance and fostering a healthy ecosystem.
Absolutely. And it's about being curious and experimenting, learning from nature, and always looking for new ways to work with its inherent wisdom.
So, to you, the listener, I hope this deep dive has sparked something in you, maybe inspired you to try making your own fermented plant extracts, or even just adding some compost to your garden. Whatever it is, just get out there and experiment.
Every step we take towards a more natural and sustainable way of gardening, it makes a difference. And remember, gardening is a journey, not a destination. So enjoy the process, embrace the abundance that nature provides, and happy gardening.
Happy gardening, everyone.